Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the podcast. We're officially back to regular programming after the previous 3 weeks of reflective episodes easing back into the year. So today, as I teased in last episode, I have a very special guest for you who can help you really set the foundations for a 2026 that feels good, really preserves your boundaries, and hopefully puts some processes in place for you to, look after yourself as much as your clients, customers, members, whoever you're serving. So today's question dives into, as I said, a topic that is really close to home for many of us. I can relate. I started out like this in business. Boundaries weren't a thing. So how do you build personal relationships that make your clients feel seen while maintaining boundaries that protect your own privacy, time, headspace, etc.? Whether you're a service provider, a coach, course creator, a membership site owner, or anyone really who works with human beings, this balance can absolutely be tough and a fine line to walk. But today's guest, as I said, has nailed it. So we're joined by Hamilton Schmid, the founder of Your Virtual Cornerstone. And her business has grown, which is pretty impressive, almost entirely by word of mouth over the last 5 years, because Hamilton and her team deliver the kind of experience that we strive for on this podcast that really has clients excited to share her brand with their connections as well. As it happens, I was introduced to Hamilton by my guest expert of episode 35, Ash McDonald. Thank you, Ash, for the introduction. I really love the online space because it brings so many amazing people into my orbit. So welcome to the show, Hamilton.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Thanks so much. And Hamilton, by the way, has a 10-week-old baby, so I really appreciate her slotting things in between breastfeeding, baby napping. So hopefully we could get the episode in. So I always feel like it's much better when introduce myself on podcasts. So I'm going to hand over to you, Hamilton, to just give people a little bit of an introduction around who you are, how you got to where you are today, and how you support online business owners.
Yeah, so like you said, I'm Hamilton. I am the founder of Virtual Cornerstone, and we are a full service team supporting women in the online space. So we do everything from marketing to copywriting, admin, OBM, just about anything what I would call a communications and marketing umbrella. We service women in this area. And over the last 5 years, I've grown a team with expertise in different areas. So we're able to be a one-stop shop rather than having to go and source all these different people for all your different needs. You can just come to us and we have the expertise all in one place. Our clients are all women. Almost all of them are moms who have just started a business and gotten to that point that I think we all get to where we feel like, I don't want to be doing all these other things. Like I started my business for one reason. And so we kind of take all those other things off your plate so that you can focus on what you love to do and why you started your business in the first place. Like you said, many of our clients have been with us from the very beginning. I started really as a virtual assistant and have sort of grown it into this full team, full service, one-stop shop. But lots of them have been with us for 5 years now, which is super fun and really a reflection of getting to have that personal relationship and building on that over time together.
How amazing is that? Like, I love personally working with clients for years and years and years on end. You get to know each other
Yes.
and really know the quirks as well, how you like to work, how they like to work. So clever, particularly as women. I feel we try to hold on to things and do it all ourselves. So such an important service you're providing to really just take the load off those women and feel like they can focus on what their expertise is and hand off those things that really turn them into a bottleneck of their business.
For sure. Yep. Yeah. We only have so much time to get things done, right? So you have to be prioritizing.
Especially as mums, I feel like, how we work is quite different too. I don't know, people without kids, it always feels a bit easier to juggle things and just get things done. So seeing that you have managed to hold on to a lot of your clients from day dot, I'm curious to start with your take on what it really means to create personal client experiences, because we always throw it out there. I really look after my clients. I'm awesome at those relationships, but you would have got a very unique perspective on this too, because you're not only supporting your clients, but you're also often working behind the scenes in your clients' businesses where you're seeing how they're handling things as well.
Right. Yeah, we are in a unique position where we get to see how clients operate. it's not just here's what we need and we get it done and pass it off to you. We're logged into your inbox. We're looking at your calendar. We know your travels. So really having all that kind of inside scoop makes a big difference on how we can deliver that personalization and making sure that we really are building a personal relationship. And that is one of the things that we really pay attention to is what do you have going on? What seems important to you? And something I call communication mirroring, where we are trying to match your style of work, especially because we have such long term relationships. It really matters to me that we are matching how you like to work. So, one client might like multiple text messages in a row. You know how some people like to just blast off a bunch of text messages, and another client might prefer everything in a paragraph or no text at all, only email. And we're really customizing based on what works for that client and what we know works for them and knowing them really individually and personally to customize that experience rather than just a blanket, here's how we do things. And I've talked to a lot of clients who have been in situations where someone comes in and says, I only use Slack to communicate, or, they have these structures. And yes, from our side of things, it's nice to have that kind of structure. But a lot of times for the client experience, it just doesn't work for them because they have their own way of working already. So rather than trying to set up some sort of system that I make clients come into, we do the opposite. And we're going to come into your systems, or we're going to help you set up the system that works best for you to make sure it's personalized in that way and not expecting you to learn something new. The whole point is you already have too much going on, right? You don't want to have to learn someone else's system. So really just matching what works well for each client. And part of that too requires not having too much at once. I've really had to kind of slow down and say, how many clients can we realistically serve at once to ensure that we're still providing that really customized experience, because it takes the time of getting to know people and paying attention to what's going on in their life and taking notes of what they're doing and really keeping track of all of that. So you really have to be aware of what is your capacity or your team's capacity to make sure that that high standard is still set and delivered on. I've gone through seasons where I've said yes to too many things and I can't maintain it, in the way that I want to. So that's really important to pay attention to as well.
That's such a smart approach to business rather than looking at the immediate wins and the immediate positive impact on your bottom line by taking on more clients. It really then takes a hit when it comes to customer retention, right?
Right,
Because if you're not
exactly.
looking after your customers while you're landing new customers, those don't stick around because you're simply not providing the service. So,
hmm
so clever. I'm curious from a selfish perspective here, what your processes are when it comes to taking note of those intricacies of every client, because as you said, it takes time to get to know them and then to embed their way of working into that project. Do you have any framework, any processes? How do you go about formalizing that for every client?
Yeah, there's some formal pieces and there's a lot of informal pieces, right?
Yeah.
Where we're just kind of catching on to things. But one of the big things that I do is use Voxer for communication. And part of this is a boundary for myself. When I started, I was in text message and it just got mucky
Mm,
with, my personal life and my
yeah.
business life, and people could text at any time and it just felt out of control, right? So I moved everybody to Voxer. So it's in a separate space than my personal text messages, and that is a really important boundary to me because I can turn off the notifications and, still see if my mom texted me but not have to respond to clients at the same time. So that's one piece of why I love using something like that. That's the boundary, but the personalization of that is the voice and being able to hear how someone's talking and them being able to hear me back. That has proven to be really, really important in our business, and that personalization piece, especially because we do a lot of writing and creating for clients. I want to be able to hear how do they talk and how would they say this? What's their tone, their inflection? It just comes across differently, right, than an email or a texted message. And so that is a huge thing that I can highly, highly recommend, is being able to hear what a client is saying. And so that's a big focus is Voxer. We also communicate through email, and we just kind of keep it to those two things to keep it really simple. Like I said, like not having some structure system that they have to come into. The other thing is I send out client forms. So when they sign on as a client, I have them fill out a form that just shares a little bit about them. And some of it's the practical stuff like your email and your address. But I also ask them, like, do you have any hobbies? What's your favorite local coffee shop? Just some like get to know you type of things. So that way, if I'm ever like, hey, we should send a gift card to this person, I can look at, well, what's the coffee shop around the corner from them that they want a gift card to, not just another Starbucks, you know? So some of that customization can come through more of a formal like intake form. And then the other piece is, like I said, because we have access to their email, their calendars, their moms, we're paying attention to what's going on. And so it can be really simple little things like their kid had a school show and we just ask how it was the next day. Paying attention to what are those little things that you can just kind of follow up on and show that you're paying attention to their personal life. And that's where it's not as formalized. You know, I don't have a calendar of like, make sure you ask so and so what happened, but I'm just always kind of paying attention what's happening in their personal life or even in their business. You know, hey, they had an important sales call. How did that go? Showing that interest in their business goes a really long way. You know, people love to share about how things are going for them. If they're a mom, they have kids, they love to talk about their kids. I'm learning that as a new mom myself. I'm like, I'll talk about my baby all day long. So just any little thing that you know you can kind of chat about just helps them feel that safe personal space with you.
Yeah, it's that intentionality
Yeah, exactly.
in every interaction and paying
Mhm.
attention. It goes such a long way, actually, writing down, taking little notes, what's coming up in their business. So, boundaries. I know you mentioned you had to work on moving things out of text message into Voxer. I'm sure that's just part of it. But what are some other early boundaries that you have set for yourself along the way, or even had to reset as you went along in business and grew your agency to make the way you work with clients sustainable?
Yeah, so a big one is working hours. And that was something I really did struggle with early on because I had this feeling of like, I have to respond right away. That's part of the value of what I'm giving them. And what I learned was if I'm responding all the time, one, obviously that's not sustainable and my personal life is struggling. But I also realized that I'm not giving as high of quality if it's not during my set focused time. And I'm the kind of person that likes to have no unread messages and I want to just respond. So for me, it's a boundary of like, don't look at your email if you're not ready to respond to something well. And then also communicating those hours with clients. So when someone onboards with us, we have a PDF that we send them that outlines here's our working hours. We have a 2-day turnaround on tasks and really sticking to that and just making sure that it's very clearly communicated. I really found that clients don't really mind if you're not on all the time. You know, they understand, they have a life too, but making sure that you are delivering in the times that you are on, that's what really matters. And so even just sending check-ins, like I said, we have a 2-day turnaround, but I will send a check-in like, "Hey, here's where we're at on that thing." Just extra little drops that we can have where we kind of pop in and let them know what's going on, even though it's not done yet, helps them to feel taken
Mm,
care of because they know they're on
yeah.
our minds. And I kind of start my morning looking at the client list. Okay, where are we at? When's the last time we talked to them? Make sure they've heard from us recently. Then the other thing I do is I don't work on Fridays. And that is really clearly communicated as well in that PDF. You know, our office hours are Monday through Thursday at specific times and we don't work on Fridays. And if someone sends something, you know, Friday through the weekend, we'll respond on Monday and just reiterate that boundary. Hey, we saw you messaged on Friday. Just a reminder, we aren't back till Mondays, but here you go, you know, and kind of just gently sprinkling in those reminders when we need to, but at the same time, allowing clients to message anytime. You know, someone can email me on a Saturday, that's fine, but they know I'm not going to get back to them yet. And I really believe that boundaries are our own responsibility. And when we set the boundary and then cross it, clients think, oh, well, they weren't legit about that boundary, right? Because they just went right over it. So it's really been a practice for me to be responsible for my own boundaries and reminding myself if I want clients to respect this, I can't send an email on Friday afternoon if I said I wasn't working. You know, maybe I am working, but I always schedule it for Monday so they don't
Yes.
know, right? Because we're setting a precedent of maintaining those boundaries we told them.
Yeah, so clever. And it's so true. Once you drop that ball and people
Right.
get used to receiving responses on Fridays,
Mhm.
they come back for seconds and thirds. Yeah, transparency, I feel, is like the key here. Just being open and honest
Totally.
from the beginning transparently communicating expectations, what's going to happen. And then, as you said, communicating that you're working on something, giving progress updates, even unprompted, to keep people informed. I'm curious how you've built a referral based business, particularly because you have very firm boundaries and some people think it's about going above and beyond all the time. So, what are some tangible things that you have built into your business to encourage that customer loyalty, but also word of mouth where people do the word spreading for you?
Yeah, well, I think you really hit it with transparency. And building that personal relationship has gone so far. Clients, they feel like friends, but not in an unprofessional way. So we've really managed to allow it to be personal, and that goes two ways, but I'm very aware of how much do I want to share and letting it be enough that we can have that personal connection, but not, not more than I'm comfortable with. I also find that just being open to feedback has made a big difference in asking for the feedback. So I fairly regularly send out, survey requests and email clients just asking, how are things going? What could we do better? And implementing those things. I feel like a lot of times you might think to send out a survey and ask what's going on, but then you don't really do anything with it or address it head on. And that is definitely something that I think we've benefited from, is that I'm willing to have those tough conversations. It's hard, but it's so important for that long-term relationship, for clients to want to stay on with us. We have to be able to talk about what's not working and improve it. A lot of people, I think, if you're not having those conversations, then the client doesn't want to continue and you're left wondering why or what happened, when if we just go ahead and open that conversation early on and show that we're open and implementing feedback, then the relationship just continues to build, and clients have been more open to continuing to work together when we admit, oops, we totally messed that up, we fixed it. Here's the fix.
Yeah.
Let's move forward. And just addressing things like that really just straightforwardly, so that there's no blurred lines and we're not leaving clients, wishing we had done something differently. And I think in terms of the referrals, honestly, I have not like asked for referrals. I know a lot of people have like referral systems where there's like, an affiliate or whatever. We haven't really done that. I really think that it comes down to delivering a really high standard, and that truly has been enough that people want to talk about us. And when a friend comes and says, I need to hire some help, or I'm drowning, whatever, they're like, oh my gosh, we know who you need. And that word of mouth has kind of happened naturally, just based on our delivery in the client container. And so that's where I really like to focus on the experience of the client. I don't necessarily find that all these other programs are necessary. Clients, sometimes I offer like a $5 Starbucks gift card if you fill out the form or tell a friend,
Yeah.
and they don't really jump on it. Like those, they don't really need the incentive. It's naturally there when they've had the experience they want to share about. We don't have to bribe them to want to
Yeah.
talk about us. It's more about just do something so well that they naturally
Mm.
want to talk about it.
Yeah. Such a testament to the business you've built and the processes. And obviously, your customers, your clients feel comfortable sharing you with others, which is such a show of trust. I'm very much on the same page when it comes to actually inviting honest feedback, as much as sometimes, as you said, can be confronting because you obviously believe that you're delivering amazing service. So I am huge on my onboarding processes. A client recently gave me a score. I always ask, how happy were you with how this project flowed? And she gave me an 8 out of 10. And I went, let me double check here. I always love it when people don't give you 10 out of 10 because it doesn't really tell you anything. So 8 out of 10, and I reached out. And the interesting thing is a lot of my clients love having reminders, being prompted to do things. This client just got confused by the reminder. So she said, oh, it sort of made me doubt that I've given you everything. And so it just has opened up again opportunity for me to go, okay, so how do I treat people who want less reminders differently to people who love all the reminders? That's an opportunity in my business to potentially even give them an option to answer at the beginning of our project. Do you prefer all the reminders, or
Right.
are you going to be on top of it and want minimal check-ins just when it's needed? Feels a bit confronting, but the opportunity is absolutely there to then improve your processes for everyone across the board.
Right. And so much of being a business owner is that learning experience, right? Like we're always learning and growing, and it could always be better. And maybe it's better for one client, like you're saying, it's better this way for one person and better a different way for another person. And just being open to how to make those tweaks so that each individual is getting the best experience.
Exactly. And, I've been in business over 8 years. And you just get into the flow sometimes, right? You just go
Right.
with emotion. And so it's good when someone is open and honest and just gives you fresh ideas. So,
Yeah.
so
A
it's on
little
my to-do list.
disruption.
I know you've touched on celebrating milestones before via coffee cards or
Mhm.
those things you've paid attention to before. But do you have any tips to make it low lift so it doesn't feel like you constantly have to think about it? Do you have any processes to make it, achievable without doing everything manually?
Yeah, I mean, I think the big thing is having some set milestones that you know you're going to do something for, so you don't have to be constantly thinking about it. So we always have onboarding, right? That's a really great starting place to do something. I tend to send out some sort of like little onboarding gift, and it can be the same for every client, but have a little stash of the thing that you're going to send. And I've done just a postcard. I've done a postcard and a candle, like simple things that I just already have in my office ready to go when someone signed their contract. And then we do also always do Christmas gifts. So that's another thing that I can kind of count on. Like I know this is going to happen. And then just throughout the year, kind of setting for ourselves once a quarter, we're going to do XYZ check in, and kind of having a calendar. I will say though, I don't like for that to be too systemized because I want it to be really personal. So even though I know we're going to do Christmas gifts, which I'm working on right now, I actually pick a custom thing for every client. Now, it could be different depending on your business because we have about 10 to 15 clients at a time. So it's manageable for me to kind of choose something per person. But I really think that that customization makes a big difference. It shows I'm paying attention to who they are and what they like and what their families like. And, I've got one client who's a minimalist and I know she doesn't really want more stuff. Maybe she wants more activity based. Someone else has 4 kids and might want something, for herself,
Yeah.
like just kind of customizing and personalizing it in those ways. So while there are sort of a timeline and a flow to how we do things, I do keep the actual touch points pretty
Yeah.
personal. One of the other things I always pay attention to is if someone says they're sick, that's a really easy one. It could be, I've sent tea, I've sent a coffee gift card, or I've just sent a message like, "Hey, just checking in, are you feeling better? How are you feeling?" It doesn't have to be monetary. You don't have to like spend a bunch of money and time on these things, but those little check-ins showing that you're paying attention can make a really big difference. And what I will say is the way to kind of systematize that is just to put it on your calendar, right? Like
Yeah.
if someone says they're sick on Thursday, put it on my calendar for 5 minutes on Monday and that person a message and ask how they're feeling, just so that I don't forget and I don't feel like I have to keep all those
Yeah.
things in my head. But I do think those little touch points that are really customized actually are where the difference happens rather than like this great system that I'm constantly following, which kind of loses a little bit of the personal touch.
So clever how you semi-formalize it by having those milestones in the project or in your calendar, but then how that takes shape is fluid and unique
Right.
to the customer. And yeah, I'm with you on the gifting front. I don't think you need expensive gifts. I have a stash like you in my
Yep.
office, and they're all sort of handmade or boutique Aussie brands. My daughter actually is my gifting manager. So she's 14 and she loves to wrap it all and like the confetti goes in.
I love
But
it.
yeah, you don't need a huge budget to
Right.
have impact. It's more about that personalization, really knowing your customer. So I'm totally with you on that. I know we've talked about, when things go amazing in client relationships, which hopefully most of the time is the case, but we've all worked with a client or had a member student where something just didn't go to plan. You had to course correct that relationship somehow. How have you personally handled those things in the past, or do you have any tips for how you would handle tricky situations and potentially, at risk relationships?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I've definitely had clients where I felt like I communicated the boundaries and then they, weren't necessarily respected. And I will say, a part of that is the self-recognition of, okay, have I held that boundary as an example for them? And sometimes I haven't, and that's where I need to correct. Other times I have, and it comes to, kind of that tough conversation of letting them know, hey, it feels like we're really not holding this boundary. And what I would recommend is just the candid conversation of, is this going to work for you, or is my structure not fitting for you? And I kind of hold the relationships loosely. I love my clients, and if it's not the right structure for them or my boundaries don't work for them, I have to be willing to let it go. Early on, I would adjust my boundaries, right? Well, so and so really needs me on a Friday morning, so I'm going to work for them. And that's not sustainable for me. I had to come to a realization of, I choose my boundaries and I have to hold to them and be open to, if this isn't working for someone else, I want to help them find someone great who can support them within what works for them. So I have had those situations where I had a client who by 5 a.m. every morning was just, I mean, it was like 2 hours worth of voice memos by the time I would
Yeah.
wake up. And it was just like, okay, this this is not going to work for me, but why don't I help you find someone who's got the availability and like wants to work at this pace with you? It's just not for me. And being open to those conversations. I've also had clients where we've needed to have that conversation and we can kind of course correct and figure out what works best for both of us. One in particular, as I was getting ready to take a maternity leave earlier this year, she had kind of gotten used to this sort of all day back and forth. I was always in Voxer right there with her. And as I was getting ready to take a leave, my business manager was taking over and her capacity was different, right? So she wasn't able to always respond all day long, kind of the way I had been. So we had to set new expectations. And so we had to have that conversation. And the first thing was setting the expectation, right? Very clear. Here's what we can do. Does that work for you? And once she was on board, really holding to delivering on those expectations. A lot of people in the service world have had negative experiences with service providers. And so when we don't deliver what we said we would, it kind of opens a wound for them. And it's like, uh-oh, especially with what we do, because we've got access to so much personal information and your passwords and all those things. A lot of clients come to us having had a previous experience of, someone logged into everything and then they ghosted me or whatever. So we're really careful to make sure that we deliver, because they could be coming from that kind of experience. So setting the expectation and delivering on it, and then practicing it slowly. So with this particular client, as I was getting ready to take a leave, we said, okay, instead of kind of communication all day, there's going to be a morning check-in, an afternoon check-in, and an evening check-in. And then we're going to kind of practice and get to it slowly. So what we did is, over the course of a month or two, we started just slowly pulling back the amount of communication and transitioning into that set structure of, 3 check-ins a day, rather than just this, stark contrast, like, well, we're not doing that anymore. It was, let's have the conversation about it. Let's kind of slowly transition to it. And then also just checking in regularly about how that's working. So as we were making this transition, I would check in and say, how's this feeling? Is this enough? Are you feeling okay about this? And just, again, having that open dialogue about how we can be supporting them within the boundary that we've discussed and agreed upon. Not stepping outside the boundary just because it's not working for them, but being open to the feedback and working together. And that's where that honesty has really made a big impact on our relationships. That I am honest about, here's what my capacity is, and I can't guarantee I can get back to you within 2 hours, but I can guarantee, within a day. And that back and forth, and both parties really feeling safe and comfortable to be honest about what can work. And we've almost always been able to find a groove with that kind of conversation to
Yeah.
get into it.
But again, it just shows your customers feel confident that you're being honest and they can be
Hmm.
honest with you. As I said, I've struggled with boundaries early on in my business where I didn't pay attention to red flags, but it's experience as well, isn't it? Like,
Totally.
over time, you need to go through a few of those situations, reflect on what you could have done better, reflect on what
Right.
potentially you could have picked up at the beginning, and then making that part of your project. So,
Right.
and rather than running from those conversations that have to be had, it's a matter of just stepping up and just putting it out there. Let's chat about it like
Yeah.
grown-ups.
Yeah, especially as you go through different seasons. I mean, for me, being a new mom, it's like, okay, my capacity has shifted now and my boundaries are shifting. And just having grace for yourself, that just because this is how you started in your business doesn't mean that's how you need to deliver forever and ever. But when those shifts happen, again, communicating it really clearly and openly with the client so they know the shifts that are happening. I've really seen that big time becoming a mom and having to communicate how things are shifting. And I have sort of used my baby a little bit in the sense of, like, I'll say, okay, here's how things need to shift. And also, here's a really cute picture of her.
Yeah,
And don't you want to be okay with these changes? Because she's so cute,
totally
So
fair game.
Right. So, but it's that personal touch, right? I'm willing to share a little bit so that you can kind of understand where I'm coming from. And there's just so much of a relationship there because we're having that honesty with each other. And yeah, just things, shift and change. And I think we probably all started our business with no boundaries and
Yeah,
had to learn this is not going to work forever.
absolutely. But, that's the beauty. You can create your own boundaries, they can
Right.
evolve. And because you're the business owner, it's up to you how you want to work and how you want to serve those
Yeah.
clients. But yeah, if listeners are now going, oh my God, that sounds amazing. I really need to implement some of those personalized touches into my processes. What is one actionable bit of advice that you would have for those listeners that they can start with to make progress?
I would say start small. Just do something. A handwritten card goes a really long way. So maybe that's adding it to your onboarding process. Maybe it's just sending a check in the mail. Again, that's not expensive to just get a postcard to them, but that personalization of it being your handwriting, it reflects that you took the time to sit down and think of it. If they're clients that you already have that you're trying to kind of mix these personal touches into, just send a check-in, or just, hey, I'm so grateful that you're working with us. I like to tell clients a lot how grateful we are for them and remind them they're making an impact in our lives just as much as we're making an impact in theirs, and letting that be kind of that personal relationship that this is a two-way street, and it does impact me and my family and my team and their families. And so I would say a handwritten note is a great place to start. A simple, Starbucks gift card can be a good place to start, and just starting to pay attention to what those little things are. You might hear someone say that they're sick and just kind of brush it off. Okay, talk to you next week. What if you just gave yourself a little reminder on your calendar to ask them how they're feeling? If you know that they were taking the afternoon off early to go to a kid's school play, make a quick note on your calendar for tomorrow morning to ask how the show was. Those little things really do make all the difference. And so just kind of slowing down enough to pay a little bit more attention, and then just, if it's a sticky note on your computer or on your calendar, whatever small thing you need to help actually implement it, just start there and start with those little things. I think you'll be surprised how far just the little things go.
Yeah. Yeah. They can have so much impact, isn't it? That little personal touch out of nowhere, totally unexpected.
Right.
So good. One question I ask all my guests before we wrap up is what are you wondering when it comes to customer experience in 2026? And who would you love to answer this question for you?
Okay, so there is a copywriter I really look up to, Corey Myers, someone I know personally in my area, and she does a lot of deep research. So when she works with someone to do copyright for them, she'll talk to their clients and ask about their experience. And I'm curious, knowing so much about her clients and that deep research phase, how does she use that information, not just for the copy that she's writing, but the customer experience that she then brings to that client that she's
Yes,
gotten to really, really know?
that is such a clever question. Let me reach out to her and see whether we can get
Yeah,
her on the
please
show
do. Yeah, I
to
would love to
answer.
hear it.
Where can people find you, Hamilton, and connect with you, learn more about your work, and yeah, get into your orbit?
Yeah, so our website is your virtualcornerstone.com. I'm on Instagram at Virtual Cornerstone. I'm also on Threads. That has been sort of the easy lift I've been able to do as a new mom, is just posting on Threads has been super fun. So building a community over there. And then, our website has all the information. And if you email hello at yourvirtualcornerstone.com, you'll get to me. And I'd love to chat with anyone who's looking to connect.
Well, thanks so much for coming on the show, Hamilton. Such a good chat and so much to think about. And listeners, make sure you give Hamilton a follow and check out her website and connect with her online. If you also have a question, a listener question that you would love me to answer on a future episode of the podcast, you can submit your questions via the form on the podcast page, which is all linked up in the show notes. And if you've enjoyed listening, please make sure you follow, share, like, all the things, and share the podcast with your business besties. Thanks so much for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.